My name is Leon Carver, and last December I learned that loneliness can open doors that locks cannot close. Fiona and I rented the house because it was cheap and close to my job. It sat alone at the edge of a frozen field, with only a narrow road connecting it to town. Most people left the area for Christmas, and a storm warning kept the rest indoors. We planned to stay inside for 3 days straight, eat canned soup, and pretend the world did not exist. On the first night, the power went out. The house fell into a thick quiet, broken only by the ticking of cooling pipes. Fiona lit candles while I checked the breaker. Everything looked normal. No blown fuses. No reason for the darkness. Snow piled up fast outside, swallowing the road. By morning, we were cut off completely. That was when the footprints appeared. They began at the front porch and ended at the wall of the house. No marks leading away. No explanation. Just deep impressions pressed into the snow as if someone had walked straight into the siding and vanished. Fiona tried to laugh it off, but her voice shook. She said maybe the wind erased the rest. I knew better. The snow was untouched everywhere else. That afternoon, we heard movement inside the house. Slow footsteps above us, crossing the guest room. We froze at the kitchen table, listening. The sound stopped directly overhead. I called out. No answer. We searched the rooms together. Every door was locked from the inside. Every window frozen shut. No sign of anyone else. That night, I dreamed of a man standing at the foot of our bed, watching us breathe. I woke to find Fiona already sitting up, staring at the doorway. She whispered that someone had been standing there moments before. She described him in detail. Tall. Thin. Face too pale for the cold. The description matched my dream exactly. On the second day, things began moving. A chair shifted closer to the bedroom door while we slept. Cabinet doors opened on their own. Our coats disappeared from the hooks and reappeared folded neatly on the couch. Then the voice started. It sounded like mine at first. Distant and unsure. Repeating words I had said days earlier. Fragments of conversations Fiona and I had shared in private. We followed the sound to the guest room. The man stood there, facing the window. He did not turn when we entered. He wore my coat. His hair was cut the same way as mine. When he spoke, his voice was wrong. Stretched. Uneven. Like something learning language by listening through walls. He said my name. Fiona screamed. The man turned slowly. His face was mine, but empty. Eyes unfocused. Mouth smiling too wide. He asked if we were ready to stay forever. I grabbed Fiona and ran. The front door would not open. The windows would not break. Every exit led us back into the hallway, as if the house had folded inward. The man followed without rushing. Each step echoed heavier than the last. He began copying Fiona next. Repeating her laugh. Her breathing. The way she said my name when she was afraid that she collapsed against the wall, hands over her ears. The candles went out one by one. In the dark, the man whispered that the storm would never end if we left him alone. He said the house needed voices. Needed warmth. I felt his hand on my shoulder. It was cold and wrong, like touching wet clay. When the lights came back on suddenly, the house was silent. The man was gone. So was Fiona. Her shoes sat by the door. Her coat still folded on the couch. The snow outside remained untouched. The storm ended that night. The road cleared by morning. The police said she must have wandered off confused. But sometimes, when the house is quiet, I hear her voice upstairs, repeating the same sentence softly, as if learning how to be human again. My name is Riley Madsen, and I still avoid train stations in December. Some journeys are not meant to end. I boarded the night train on December 23rd, expecting nothing worse than delays. Snow had been falling non-stop, thick and heavy, swallowing roads and grounding flights. The train was the last one running through the northern pass before Christmas, and everyone on board seemed relieved just to be moving. June Holbrook sat across from me. We had never met before that night, but shared discomfort has a way of forcing connection. She was traveling to see her sister, carrying only a small bag and a wrapped gift. She smiled often, but her eyes stayed fixed on the window, as if she expected something to follow us. The train lurched forward just after midnight. Outside, the world turned white and endless. Trees bent under snow. Towns disappeared into darkness. Inside, the lights flickered but stayed on. An hour into the ride, the conductor walked through the car counting heads. He stopped near the back, frowned, and counted again. There were 12 of us. Then 13. The extra passenger sat alone, several rows behind June. A man in an old gray coat, hands folded neatly in his lap. His face was calm in a way that made my skin crawl. Not relaxed. Emptied. The conductor asked for his ticket. The man looked up slowly and said he was already counted. The conductor laughed nervously and moved on. June leaned toward me and whispered that she did not remember seeing him board. Neither did I. Soon after, the train slowed to a crawl. The intercom crackled. The conductor announced that the tracks ahead were blocked by ice. We would be stopped for a while. The man stood. He walked down the aisle, footsteps too quiet for the metal floor. Every head turned to follow him, but no one spoke. He stopped beside an elderly woman and asked her what she regretted most. She laughed, confused, and told him to leave her alone. He leaned closer and repeated the question. Her smile faded. She began to cry. She told him about a son she had not spoken to in 10 years. About a phone call she ignored. About a knock on the door that came too late. The man nodded and moved on. Panic spread through the car. People stood. Shouted. Demanded answers. The man stopped beside June. He asked her why she was really traveling. Her hands shook as she clutched the gift. She said it was none of his business. He smiled and said the train would not move until everyone was honest. The lights went out. In the darkness, voices began to rise. Confessions spilled out uninvited. Secrets dragged into the open. People screamed about things they had buried for years. The air grew thick and hot despite the cold outside. When the lights returned, the elderly woman was gone. Her seat empty. Her coat still folded. The man continued. Each person he spoke to vanished shortly after. No sound. No struggle. Just absence. When he reached me, my chest tightened. He asked me who I left behind. I told him I had no one. He tilted his head and repeated the question. And suddenly I remembered the voicemail I never returned. The friend who needed help. The message that ended with please. The man nodded. He moved to June last that she opened the gift herself, hands trembling. Inside was a snow globe. A tiny train circled endlessly inside. She said her sister had stopped answering calls years ago. Said she was afraid to hear the truth. The man placed his hand on the globe. The train outside jolted. Snow fell from the ceiling. The engine roared back to life. The man returned to his seat. When we arrived at the next station, emergency crews waited. They said several passengers had never existed on the manifest. They said the missing people must have wandered off. June and I were released at dawn. As I walked away, I looked back at the train. The man stood at the window, watching me. Later that night, June called me crying. She said the snow globe would not stop shaking. Inside, the tiny passengers were screaming. My name is Oscar Fenwick, and I stopped believing Christmas was about forgiveness the night the church asked for a replacement. The town of Briar Hollow had one church and no reason for it to still stand. The roof sagged. The bell no longer rang. But every December, people came back just for Christmas Eve, dragging memories behind them like chains. Helen Cross organized it every year. She said tradition mattered more than belief. I volunteered to help because I had nothing else to do. The basement was colder than the graveyard outside. Old decorations sat stacked in crates, labeled in fading ink. Angels. Candles. A wooden nativity set wrapped in yellowed cloth. Helen warned me not to open the last crate alone. I laughed and opened it anyway. Inside was a small wrapped box. Red paper. Green string. No label. It was warm. I dropped it instinctively. Helen gasped and told me not to touch it again. She said it always appeared when the church prepared for Christmas, and it always disappeared after the service. I asked what was inside. She said no one ever opened it twice. That night, the box appeared on the altar. No one admitted placing it there. The priest refused to touch it. The candles flickered whenever anyone got close. Children began crying without explanation. The box pulsed faintly, like something breathing under paper. Helen told me the truth after midnight rehearsal. Years ago, a child vanished during Christmas Eve service. The town searched. Prayed. Blamed outsiders. The body was never found. The next year, the box appeared. People said it was a sign. A reminder. They kept it. Every year after, someone from the town disappeared shortly after Christmas. Always someone who had stayed away too long. Someone who came back. I told Helen this was insane. That we should leave. Call someone. Burn the church down if we had to. She asked me if I had ever noticed the town shrinking. I had. Empty houses. Missing names. Gaps in old photographs. She said the church took one to keep the rest. The box began to shake. Paper split slightly at the corner, revealing pale wood beneath. A hand. Small. Stiff. Carved. The nativity figures moved on their own that night. I watched them shift positions, heads turning toward the box. The baby figure rolled onto its side, hollow underneath. Helen cried. She said the gift needed to be opened by someone who remembered the missing. I remembered. My sister Lucy vanished here 20 years ago. Christmas Eve. She went to the bathroom and never came back. My family left town the next morning. I never returned until now. The box slid toward me across the altar. My name was carved into the wood beneath the paper. I ran. The doors slammed shut. The bell rang once above me, cracking stone. Voices filled the church. Hymns sung backward. The nativity figures stood upright now, faces smooth and blank. The box split open fully. Inside was a hollow space shaped like a body. Not a child. An adult. The walls were lined with names scratched deep into the wood. Hundreds of them. Helen stood beside me. She said the church never forgot. It only waited. The figures began to step down from the altar. Their wooden feet left frost on the stone. I begged her to help me. She shook her head and said she had already given someone years ago. The church demanded balance. The box pulled at me. Not physically, but inside my chest. Memories rushed back. Lucy laughing. Lucy holding my hand. Lucy walking away. I realized then that the church had not taken her. It had taken me. I stepped forward. The box closed. Christmas morning, the church stood silent. Snow untouched. No footprints. Helen unlocked the doors and placed the box back into the crate. She crossed my name off the town registry. People say Briar Hollow is abandoned now. But every Christmas Eve, the light in the church basement turns on by itself. Waiting for the next one who remembers.